GAA Future Leaders is building up to about 10 years in existence. It's currently the largest transition year programme in Ireland and engages almost 20,000 students each year in a variety of activities across the various modules that are involved. The man behind it all, Eoghan Hanley, joins me today to talk about how it started, where it's going, the many days out that students have gotten to experience across the way, and success stories that have come from some of those. It's, I think, 7 years since I met you up in Croke Park now. The first time I was getting on board with Future Leaders, you were up to about, were you going from around 40 schools to 200 schools at that stage? Give us an overview now of what is Future Leaders, the programme in general. If someone has never heard of it before, it's some kind of TY programme, but what's actually involved?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think it probably is 7 years. I remember meeting you right above in Croke Park the first time, right? And we were trying to grow the programme, and I'd actually met Elaine, your Elaine, at the Games conference actually, and we were chatting about the programme. But I suppose at that time it was very much in its infancy. Yeah. I suppose the current numbers are 326 to be exact. I suppose we started off with 5 pilot schools, I remember at the time, moving from 5 to 25, just, I suppose, pilot phase 1 and pilot phase 2. And then it was really word of mouth at the stage that when you were coming on board, we were after opening up to the public, and asking, I suppose, to get to see gauge what kind of interest there was in a program, in a transition year program like the Future Leaders. And the interest was huge. We were delighted with it, and we jumped straight away nearly from that in around the 40 mark to up to about 200, I remember at the time. And that's obviously when we needed to bring on a large group of associates to help us with the in-school support. And I suppose while the growth, we grew incrementally then for about a 2 to 3 year period, and then obviously COVID hit, as everyone knows, and like everything else, it took a bit of a hit during the 2 years there of lockdown, and even I suppose the first year back in school. Really, it took a little bit of time, I suppose, while we maintained the numbers to a large extent in the first year back, but in terms of actually expanding and growing, it took, as I said, up to about maybe 22, 23 year maybe for it all, then all of a sudden the numbers start creeping up. So yeah, we're up at 2326, as I said. Delighted with that, and obviously as time goes on, we'll be looking to grow that even further once we're happy that it's embedded in those schools that it's in, and that we can provide adequate support to the teachers and students in those schools to help them get the best program possible for their students. You asked me, I suppose, the question there, what exactly is the Future Leaders Program? I know I went off on a bit of a tangent with the numbers, but I suppose I get asked that question an awful lot, like what is the Future Leaders Program? What I suppose in its essence, it's a leadership program for transition years in a GAA context. And I suppose the idea is to develop leadership skills, responsibility, maturity, initiative in TYs by, I suppose, through a series of modules that we have on the program, but I suppose more importantly by allowing them to put their skills that they've developed in the modules into practice by running events. And what you find then, and what we found over the years, is that the kids love the practical aspect of it. They love the getting involved, whether that's from a coaching point of view or getting involved in analysis or journalism or photography side of it. Let's say if it is a case that they're linked in with school teams, but the big thing I suppose for us would be, as I said, organising of events. And what we find is that while, again, you do have the big GAA logo, and obviously you have the IDA logo, because it is a joint initiative between the GAA and IDA, which is a fantastic partnership that we're very proud of. And without the help of either partner, the program wouldn't be where it is today. And but I suppose a lot of times people might see the big GAA logo, for example, and they might think, well, this isn't for me, or this wouldn't be for my students. And we'd always be at pains to explain to them that it's for every student, that it is first and foremost a leadership program, and that, like in my own school and the students I would have had over the years, that oftentimes it's the kids who might not necessarily come from a GAA background or a sporting background at all that would be the ones that would be front and center in the organising of events, because they would have a skill set that's really, really vital to bring to the table. And look, we can get into that in a while, but so yeah, I suppose in its essence, I suppose it's the Future Leaders Program is a joint initiative between the GAA and Oide. It's a transition year program that's designed to develop leadership skills in transition year pupils.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm thinking back now to some of the COVID stuff when you're trying to explain elements to the digital portfolio and how to log on and create different bits to teachers over the phone because you couldn't go and visit them. I've memories of that jumping back up now. We'll come to some of the events and how students from traditionally non-GAA backgrounds got involved. Like I have some of the memories of students who never went to a hurling or a football or a camogie match before, but would have ran something like a super game centre or a games day for first years and just excelled in it, and seeing like what they've brought to stuff has just been brilliant. But we'll take a couple of steps backwards. How did it start off? I remember you briefly telling me that you were asked one day to run a super game centre and you're like, yeah, definitely. What's a super game centre?
Yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah, I suppose I was transition year coordinator myself in Gort Community School, and in 2015-16 school year, Damien Coleman, who was obviously working full-time with the GAA at the time, he approached me and asked me would I run, as you said, a super game centre with first and second year hurlers in Gort Community School. And again, I said, yeah, brilliant, Damien, no problem, I will, because in fairness to Damien, he'd often come to me with different ideas. I'm a Munster GAA tutor, coach, educator myself, so I would have known Damien fairly well, and I always liked working with him on different projects. But anyway, Damien said, "Will I run a super game centre?" I said, "Yeah, brilliant." So, as you said, what is a super game centre? So he explained it, and I remember thinking at the time, Joe, what it was a comment that he made. He said, "Sure, your transition years could run it as a TY project," and I suppose that was the first, light bulb moment. Maybe I was thinking, okay, hold on a second. And I said, well, can we put a different spin to it and maybe, I suppose, get them involved, let's say, on various different levels, while we will obviously run the Super Game Centre, which is basically a blitz for first and second years. It's like Go Games, except for second level students, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, really. And Damien said, yeah, brilliant, go for it. So what we did was, I had 56 TYs at the time, and I remember bringing them into the demonstration room and explaining what we were going to do in terms of organising a blitz, but that I wanted to recreate the match day experience in Croke Park. Let's say when you go to Croke Park, you have 82,300 there. They're there to obviously watch the 15 on 15 on the field, but what needs to happen for that match to take place? So you have to have a referee, you have your umpires, linesmen, you've got your coaches, you've got your, if you take, I suppose, at that elite level, you go a little bit deeper on it, you've got your S&C coaches, you have your nutritionists, you've got your analysts, you've got a huge background team in inter-county games now, as you know yourself. Take a step further back, let's say at county board level, you've got your committees, you've your chairperson, secretary, treasurers, PROs, that whole committee level that again is integral to the survival of the games, and I suppose a game's thriving in whatever county it might be. And then I suppose driving the hype, let's say when you're walking down past Quinn's or you're coming down Jones's Road and people are chatting, it's the journalism, the social media, the print media, the TV media, it's all building that sense of occasion, And even then in Croke Park itself, in the stadium itself, when there is matches happening, you have your stadium operations who are, I suppose, ensuring that everyone gets in and out of the stadium safely. And I suppose I was explaining that to the kids, most of whom wouldn't have never thought of a game in Croke Park on that level, let's say, because as I said, you go in, you watch the match, you come out. And I said, right guys, what can we do, like, in terms of what are our skill sets? And as I said, with 56 TYs, some of whom were interested in sport, an awful lot of whom weren't, but every one of them had skills to bring to the table. So we set up a committee. We had all the normal positions, your chairperson, treasurer, etc. Then we had our fixtures committee. I had a group of boys and girls there who were mad sports heads who wanted to be the coaches and the referees and be on the field. But there was other kids then who wanted to be the photographers, who wanted to be doing the analysis on it, who wanted to be doing the social media side of it, who might have had very good digital literacy skills. And in fairness to them, they all very much bought into it. And I was explaining to them at the time that they were all cogs in a wheel, and that if any one of them, I suppose, didn't do their part of it, or their aspect of it, that it wouldn't work as well as it should. And as I said, in fairness to them, they were excellent. I remember the social media committee was... they were putting tweets out, and they were putting stuff up on Instagram and stuff. And to be honest, to a large degree at that stage, I just wanted to. It was two reasons I was giving them a job. Was, I suppose, I wanted them obviously to feel as though they were very much part of it, and that they were doing something, I suppose, in an area that they felt that they had something to offer in. But I also wanted to, from our own point of view, in terms of GAA and Camogie and Cork Community School, I wanted the clubs in our local area to know that we were doing this, so that they'd see that we were active and that there was a lot happening in the GAA space. I didn't think for one second that someone in Croke Park would see the tweets or the Instagram and stuff, and basically that is what happened. And we got a phone call and asked what's happening and can we come down and have a look at it. And they did, and Damien and some Croke Park staff came to Gort in December 2015, and they had a full day workshop with the TYs, where the TYs were explaining everything that they were doing. And they really, I suppose, they're very proud of what they were doing. And I suppose the whole idea was that they take ownership of the project and that they drive it in whatever direction, while I was obviously there to help them, but it was their project, let's say. I remember then in January 2016 getting asked I was invited to the Games Conference to make a presentation about it. So I said, yeah, I will, no problem. But the whole idea is that these kids are empowered that is their project and they'll take ownership of it. So what I did was I introduced them, but I got the committee to speak about it, because again, I just felt as though it was good for them and it'd be a great experience. And they were brilliant and they spoke really well in Croke Park at the Games Conference. And supposed to cut a long story short, I thought that was the end of it. But in June 2016, then I got a call asking, could the GAA take the project, and would I come and help them and work with them to develop it and roll it out as a national program? And that obviously was huge. I was delighted with that. And I suppose two big things. That was the first big thing. And then the second thing then was in January 2017, when the PDST got involved. And PDST, which obviously now Oide got involved, that was massive, because that all of a sudden meant that we had access to every school and every teacher in the country. And we had access to I suppose, developing a team of associates, which would be able to go and visit those teachers and meet them in various areas in schools and in regional education centres, etc., and help with the training and the rollout of the programme as well. So, yeah, I suppose that's, a long, short story, I suppose, there. But that, I suppose, is where it all began and how it all started, really.
And when you're saying, like, when you're walking up Jones's Road to go to Croke Park, had you anyone on the day selling, like, hot dogs or making headbands and trying to flog them?
Well, it's funny enough, actually, that is what happens now. Like, I suppose, as the programme grows, and I love, like, I'd say teachers are probably, at various training days, are probably sick of hearing me talking about the importance of social media and Instagram and the Twitter, or now X, accounts, and I suppose of sharing your students' work online. But it is powerful, because what I find is that, let's say, for example, if there's kids in a school in Wexford or Carlow or Kilkenny and they're organising an event and they have some brilliant work done, brilliant ideas, and it's up on Instagram, invariably, 2-3 weeks later, you'll see a school in Donegal or in Cork, and they'll have the same ideas, or they're maybe tweaking it and putting their own stamp on it, which I think is brilliant. But and I suppose in terms of the hot dogs and the headbands and the selling merchandise and all, so like we've events month now, Future Leaders Events Month, for the last 2 years, and I suppose the focus of that really is, I suppose, to, in a concentrated period of time, to see how many events, Future Leaders events, we can have run in the period of obviously a month, Future Leaders Events Month, and to make a real impact in that whole area of physical activity and social interactions and well-being and mental health, etc. And what's gas is that I see brilliant ideas, like, for example, big blitzes that might be happening, or big sports days, or whatever the school might be running, and they would have food vendors maybe at it, and they'd have, as I said, selling various different merchandise that they'd have made, whether that's through TY Mini companies or whatever, and making the links across and using them then as fundraisers for GAA in their school or whatever it might be, or some charity or whatever it might be. And I see more and more of that happening. There was an event last year there. We have this All Ireland Super Nines, so it's an All Ireland under 15 tournament. Brilliant tournament. But there was kids there selling donuts that they had bought in, and bought them from in wholesalers, let's say, made, like, decorated them properly and all that, made signage for it, like as though they're a professional company, and then they were selling it to help fund the prizes for the Blitz, and it sounds so simple, but it was so professional. They had the cards to tap, they had the little sum up things and everything, so you could tap, and top class stuff, and again, I suppose from their point of view and the kids and the learning there, we go to Cusick Park or wherever in Ennis or Gaelic Grounds or Crow Park or wherever it might be, and you go in and you buy your program and you buy your food and you buy whatever it is, and you don't ever really think twice about it. But to see, for these kids to organise that, there's huge planning and preparation that needs to go into that. And if they can bring those skills back into their communities in the future, whether that's with their local GAA or camogie or ladies football clubs, or even if it's just into any area like rugby, soccer, basketball, just the community in general, I think it's a win-win situation for us, let's say, nationally, because the numbers that we have going through the program, multiple thousands every year, if we can, even a small percentage of them can take what they've learned and give it back in their community, I think that's only going to be a massive positive for us nationally,
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I often think back to when I was playing, there's often a disconnect in clubs between committee level and playing level, and the committee will be given out about the players and players will give out about the committee. I don't think people realise what actually is involved in terms of broader administration and stuff. Just think of some of the criticisms that comes out about the FRC at the minute without understanding what actually has to go into coming up with rule changes and everything, but having a greater appreciation at 15 or 16 as to what goes into running some big event, I think then helps you understand later on that, okay, there are reasons behind why some of these frustrations might be there. I want to take a slight step back then. So you ran your Super Game Centre, but PDST at the time in GAA wanted to expand this out as a pilot programme, and I went to 5 schools after that. So you're thinking, right, set up a committee, run a Super Game Centre, but how do specific modules start coming from that, or how are they written, or how can, this is where things start coming away from your control, and you have to kind of put stuff in place so that it's delivered in a manner that you're still willing to stand over.
Yeah, good point. So I suppose, so it started, obviously, the very first iteration of it, I suppose, that even up at the games conference when those kids were talking, there was no modules. It was just, I suppose, an expansion on the Super Games Centre idea. So I suppose in the summer of 2016, a group of people, which are now known as obviously the Future Leaders Steering Committee, we would have met quite a bit during that summer, and we were, I suppose, looking at the whole that whole project, let's say, and the various roles that those students in Cork Community School had, and then we were kind of saying, right, how can we develop an understanding of what the role is, and maybe develop some skills around it, so that it's not necessarily done blind as such. Like, it was fine, let's say, me or maybe myself or yourself, that we'd understand it, having been involved from coaching point of view and club's point of view, that we'd know, but that we wanted to make it scalable so that it could be spread across, I suppose, the schools all over the country. So we were looking at the roles. Obviously, coaching was an obvious one. So there was coaches involved with the team. So coaching was an obvious module to come out of it. Refereeing was the next obvious module to come out of it. With all the photography part and the match reports and social media side of it, your sports journalism came next. The analysis, then obviously performance analysis came. We actually had two modules. It was split. We had event management as a module, and then we had sports administration as a different module. And then I think after the second year of the pilot, we merged those two modules to become event management and sports admin. Nutrition then came on stream, well-being. So in its first iteration, I think we had 7 modules that went out, and but at the same time, the focus still was, in terms of events, was still the Super Game Centre. The only thing that the students could organise to get their overall Future Leaders Award was a Super Game Centre. And I suppose after pilot year 1 and pilot year 2, a really, really important thing that we did was bring students the first year to Abbottstown, and then the second year, after year 2, to Croke Park, where we had a bigger number. And we brought students and teachers to Croke Park and looked at everything. And I suppose the big change for me, I suppose, was that we were saying on the one hand that it was an inclusive program, but we were only allowing a Super Game Centre to be held. And we were, I suppose, the kids were saying to us, well, can we not organise other events? Because we were brainstorming with them and discussing it, and they had loads of events. They were saying, well, can we do this? Can we do that? And then we were thinking, yeah, actually, that's actually a brilliant idea. So from that then came the idea that, right, you can organise any event that's linked to any module. So if that's a well-being event, brilliant. If that's a healthy eating initiative linked to the nutrition module, brilliant. So what we kind of did was looked at the Community and Health Department in Croke Park, and they have the Healthy Clubs initiative. And we were looking at, right, what are the kind of projects and initiatives that they run through the Healthy Clubs? And we said, right, they can do a school-based version of any of them, right? So that's where your fun days and your 5K runs and walks and sports days and all, obviously the healthy eating initiatives, any of those well-being initiatives, anything like that would be linked to either Healthy Clubs, but obviously also to nutrition module and the well-being module were perfectly acceptable then. And I think the schools, the teachers and the pupils appreciated that, because all of a sudden now, again, like I suppose if you're going to be true to the GAA manifesto, where we all belong, and you're saying that everyone here, you're throwing the gates of the, metaphorical gates of the GAA club open. You're saying whether you're from a GAA background or not, there's a place for you here. Well, I think now we're a lot truer to that statement. Do you know what I mean? I think in fairness, I do feel genuinely that the Future Leaders Program is a real manifestation of the Where We All Belong motto or mantra.
Yeah, I'd agree there. Like, I know I was up at one of those feedback days in Croke Park, and I remember I brought a mix of those who are like heavily embedded in GAA and a couple who weren't at all. I remember them making the point on the way up, and like I don't care about blitzes, I don't care about camogie. Can I just run an event for like my friends where we all feel nice? And she would have been quite an outspoken girl as well. So it's great for stuff like that to come and see it being taken on board and having an impact.
Yeah.
We look at some sample events then, but just do you want to take us through what are the current modules? You said there's currently 10, so give us an overview of them and a few bits, a few of the key skills that students get from each one.
Yeah, the 10 modules are, so we start off with introductory modules, so everyone has to do that. That I suppose explains what the program's all about, the philosophy behind it and the various elements of the program. Once the student completes the introductory module, the rest of the modules are unlocked and they can access any module they want from then on. The second module that we put big emphasis on is the event management and sports administration module, because it's through the events management module that they're developing the skills and the know-how as to how to run an event, because that is ultimately what we want them to do. Like when you would have been, John, do you remember at the start, like if you go back 7 years ago there now, and if you were to do the coaching module, there might have been 5 tasks linked to the coaching module. I remember there were 7 tasks, I think, linked to one of the modules. Could have been the nutrition module. And one piece of feedback that we got from the kids and the students was that they didn't have time to organize events. They didn't have time to do the practical side of the program because they were too busy trying to complete their tasks. And while when we were in the design phase and we were designing all these tasks, it was obviously coming from a good place, because we were thinking, right, we'll give them a real solid skill set in whatever module, in whatever it might be, like performance analysis, etc. But then we realized that it was actually counterintuitive, because they couldn't go out and analyze games because they were too busy doing tasks. So that was a huge learning point for us. So the program, I suppose, is much more practical now, and it allows for much more, I suppose, hands-on experiential learning than maybe it would have 6 or 7 years ago. And I think that's huge. So the event management module is we do put a massive emphasis on it, because we do encourage the schools to get out and start organizing events, even if it's just small little tiny ones at the start of the year. And then important thing is, like, they will make mistakes. Naturally, they're going to make mistakes. Sure, we all make mistakes. But the important thing is that they get into that habit of reflecting on it, saying, right, plan, do, reflect, redo. Kolb's reflective cycle there. So, and that is very much embedded in that module. So that's the event management module. Then after that, then, like, to get the overall award, the Future Leaders Award, they have to do the introduction module, event management, plus any 2 others. So you have your coaching module. Obviously, the coaching module will be heavily aligned and linked to the introduction to coaching and games. That's the GAA coaching module anyway.
Do a lot of schools outsource that, get like the actual tutors, local tutors in to deliver it?
A lot too, yeah. And I think that's nice too, because if it is a case that I'm seeing my TYs all the time, they're hearing me and I'm the one who's talking about event management, I'm talking about, like, any subject, isn't it? Like, it's a new voice is good too, like, and mixes it up a small bit too,
Oh yeah, completely agree. Like when I've, say TYs, I've taught in PE for 3 years and I'm teaching about coaching, they're like, this lad again. Whereas if someone new comes in, even if it's the exact same message, just hearing from someone else, like, I'm way more inclined to listen here now.
100%. That one, and the referees module is another one that schools often outsource, and it's good as well, because with the nature of TYs, the TYs are pulled left, right, and centre. You don't always see them. You might have a great plan in your head that we're going to do loads this week, and then they're gone for the whole week, and you don't see them for till 2 weeks time, and then you feel under pressure to get things completed. Whereas if you bring in a referees tutor or a coaching tutor, they could have a module done in a full day, and then whereas we might see them 1 hour a week, they'll have the 5 refereeing lessons or the 7 coaching lessons done in a day, and then all they have to do is do the task linked to those modules, and that's that completed. So that's a very popular way to deliver those 2 modules. Actually on the refereeing one, a change that we brought in this year, which I think is good, is the referees module that we have now is actually the Go Games refereeing module, which they are qualified Go Games refs after they complete it, which is, for a teenager, that's a very useful thing to have, because even just from a point of view, earn that few extra euro at the weekend and stuff to helping out in Go Games blitzes, but it's also a SCORM.
It's really good just to have a referee in your club that you're trying to develop up. Like, I'm lucky at home, my club, we've like an All-Ireland inter-county referee, Johnny Murphy. He's done ladies football All-Irelands, and like, it's so important to see that for younger people, look up to a really good referee, and then just to give them the opportunity to start refereeing young in a club as well, as opposed to when someone retires, you try and push them towards the end, but getting the practice in and making the inevitable mistakes you're going to make early, so you have time to get them out of the way before your mid to late 20s or anything.
Yeah, 100%. And as I said, with it now being a SCORM as well, so it's the kids can actually do it at home themselves and just follow it through, and it it's actually, it takes that even more pressure off from a point of view of time for a teacher to have contact time with them. You could just say, here guys, work away there in that referees module and we'll check your tasks at the end, Then we have obviously performance analysis, which we linked with maths. That's one of my own, I do like that one myself personally. I suppose having an analysis background myself, I do enjoy the whole getting data, and I know you do too, John. So getting data and then looking at it and analysing it and then creating games based on the data that I found. It's just like, maybe it's a hobby of mine, but again, I do find that it's a good way, it's a good skill set for the kids to develop in terms of actually looking at the games in a different way than they would previous, and analysing things and looking at, the correlation between X and Y, and this happened, so now because of that, this happened,
I think the performance analysis is brilliant for, number one, the student who maybe wasn't that good at playing but loved being involved and was more maths or numerically aligned. It gave them a great way to be of value to their local club or their local team. And on the flip side, the student who might be really interested in going down coaching, it makes them far more informed coaches around what's happening, not just being reactive and subjective the whole time. It gives them a little bit of basis and fact in what's going on in front of them.
Oh, yeah, 100%, yeah. Exactly. And you know what I love seeing then is hearing stories about this fella or a girl that might have done the performance analysis module in the Future Leaders Program and then is involved in their club and helping out with their senior team. And this, oftentimes, as you were saying there, John, it could be a fella or a girl who might never have actually reached that standard themselves as players, but is now an integral part of the setup and is a really valued member of the senior or intermediate, whatever the club might be, their setup that is making a really valuable contribution to it. And even like I often say, while there's towns and villages up and down the country where the GAA club, and it's a great thing, obviously, but where the GAA club is really the centre of the community. And if you hurl or if you play camogie or football or whatever it might be, well, then you're very much involved and you're part of the fabric of that community. But as we all know, there's lots of kids in these towns and villages that don't play, and they're not, and they're not maybe as involved, and they don't have that maybe sense of belonging that they'd only crave to have or love to have. And by developing these skill sets in them, whether it is as a coach or as a referee or as an analyst or even in terms of PR and the social media skills where they might not have ever held a hurley or kicked a football, but now they're really valued and they feel valued, and it's not a makey-uppy job, it's a proper job that requires a proper skill set, in terms of that. For that kid, that sense of belonging and well-being in them now is greatly enhanced because of this, and I think that's a big thing for me and the lads who are working on the program and have been working on the program behind over the last number of years. I think that is definitely a driving force for us, and something that we would always be mindful of. Okay, who are we doing it for, and how is it going to impact these young people up and down the country in a positive way? So I think, as I said, I alluded to the sports journalism one there as well. Same thing, actually developing the skill set and understanding, there's a narrative out there now that kids are digital natives, that they know everything to do with technology and social media, but they actually don't. They really don't. And in terms of developing, video editing skills in them, even developing social media skills and understanding, you're right, Instagram can do this, but it can also do all of these other things too. How to use social media to promote an event or to promote a match or to promote whatever it is, and then linking in with things like other software like Canva and all the various different software that's out there now that kids, that not just kids, that we can all use, but to make really, really top quality social media content. And that's something now, I've seen schools there, there's schools, future year schools around the country, and I love seeing it, where their Future Leaders Instagram page is better than some inter-county Instagram pages, and inter-county PROs would do well actually having a look at seeing what some of these teenagers are doing, and not to mind club PROs. And I'm not casting aspersions on inter-county PROs or club PROs, but I'm just saying that, by developing this skill set at a young age and seeing, what can be done. And again, going back to, as I said, being valued members of your community, like if they're able to produce top quality content, that makes them feel good, but also from a point of view of promotion for the club, it's brilliant,
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. We had a student, he's in fourth year of like college, on the sports management degree. In his placement last year, he got a job with an inter-county camogie team running all their social media for him. And that was his part-time paid role, doing up Canva designs of the teams before they came up, clipping together little edits of interviews afterwards, just general promo for the team. And I remember chatting to development officers in a couple of other counties, and they all said, can we be like, I'm not going to say who it was, but can we get someone to do, like, what's going on there? They have a really good PR team. Like, it was a student on placement who just made it his own. And, they're really valuable skills that could have been developed in TY and brought forward. Like, he's probably going to put that to greater use once he's graduated and all now as well.
Yeah. And like, exactly. And I love seeing that. And like, you start hearing, and when you hear stories of things like that, it's brilliant, because like, even I was contacted by a club who, I won't mention the club, or I won't mention the competition, but they run a fairly large scale competition every year, and it's an invitational thing, okay? And they asked me about Future Leaders students that were running a social media account, and they were wondering, could they get them in to run the social media account in the build-up to promote this big event? I said, Jesus, yeah, happy days. So I contacted the school, and they contacted the kids and linked them in, but so sure, the kids were delighted. They're absolutely thrilled because they felt like professionals, you know what I mean? And the standard of the content that was produced for the tournament was better than they had ever done before. So it's brilliant. And I think as time goes on, as it becomes more embedded, and as clubs, I suppose that's a challenge for us, let's say, is to get the knowledge out there, let's say, to county boards and to clubs, that these teenagers are there, and that there is a skill set there that we just need to tap into. Because, as I said, if you have 15, 20,000 transition year students every year coming out doing the program, well, they are going into fifth year and sixth year. But if you can tap into that resource before that, like just in around the end of TY, well, then if you get them, then you could have them for the rest of their lives, Whereas if they go on into sixth year and off into college, well, then they're probably lost to the system,
Yeah, especially at that stage where playing may not be as attractive to some, but you still want to keep them involved in the local communities you mentioned.
Exactly, yeah.
Look, some of the real highlights, and you've touched on it earlier, is the events and events month and everything like that. And we look at a few examples there. Like I remember, and even the prizes for doing really good modules. Like I think back to the 2019 Leinster final, and I was lucky enough, I got to sit in the Hawkeye box with the two lads who'd won the refereeing award. But I can't remember his name, but the chap who won the photography award, he got to shadow all the sports style photographers. And when Mark Fanning scored the penalty for Wexford, I remember looking at your man, the photographer, and when the ball hit the back net, he turned to the Wexford crowd straight away and got all the pictures of them celebrating. I was like, oh, that's really, like, you can tell he's experienced and he's quite the knack for it. So in terms of an experience for him, it was brilliant to reward specifically what he'd done well in, but also like really good skill set to develop too.
Yeah, I remember that day as well. I remember actually after the match and Wexford won, and seeing him actually out in the field with all the rest of the sports file photographers sprinting around taking photographs, and he was when all the lads were inside with the Bob O'Keefe on the ground, and he was there kneeled down in front of them, like, taking pictures. It was brilliant. He's actually now, and actually funny enough, like that guy now is gone full-time into photography.
You see, that's brilliant.
And he got into photography. I remember chatting to his teacher from, again, they were organising an event in the school. He wasn't maybe interested in being hands-on in the sports side of it. So then to get him involved, they said, here, look, will you be photographer at the thing? And one thing led to another. He turns out he was taking brilliant photographs, won the photography competition, got linked in with Sportsfile, and, well, the rest is history, And
like there's other, like I remember seeing as well how St. Peter's used to live stream a lot of their main matches. we played, when I was in the Ross, we played Loretto Wexford in the game, and you saw us have two girls there with an iPad. I was like, what are these, your stats people? I said, no, we've two Future Leaders journalists with every single team. They bring the school iPad to the game, take a few photos, write up a little piece, and we tweet that out then afterwards. So every team got great promotion the whole way through their year, which is great to see as well. What are some other events you've seen around the country, like, you know, a broad mix? Obviously, if you're super game centres and how they're promoted, but what are other ones more in the wellbeing space or the non-specific to GAA that schools could look to run?
Yeah, so like I'd often be invited to events, like, and if I can at all, I love going and seeing them, because it's like, if a school is after making the effort to invite you to see something, you know, they're obviously very heavily invested in the program, and they really are after making a big effort. So I just some of the really interesting ones I would have seen. Obviously, as you said, you have your super game centres, and you've got your primary school blitzes, and you've got your skills challenges and all that. That's fantastic. It's brilliant. You also have, like, you know, I remember going to a whole school colour run, 5K run, and they were throwing the powder and the paint and all that kind of stuff. Brilliant. I remember going to visit a school that were doing a puck fada, and they had a junior puck fada and they had a senior puck fada. And for the junior one, in fairness, they had a huge work done. So the school was in the town, and it wasn't so much a puck fada. It was kind of more like sometimes clubs run it, where they are going down the roads and up and around and all that. So they had the guards and all notified, and they had roads closed, and they were going down the road and through the park in the town and back around this way and up this other street, and in teams of two, and brilliant to watch it. And then that was for their junior one, but then for their senior one, there was about a mile out the road, there was a hill, a decent sized hill, and they were copying the Cooley Mountains and up over the hill and back around it. And again, like, in fairness to the teachers involved there and the students, obviously, like, you know, thinking outside the box there, like, and there is like, there's no point in saying otherwise. There's a bit of work involved in that. That doesn't just happen overnight. Do you know what I mean? Because you know, between your health and safety and all various things has to be taken into account, and they would have obviously had to go up that hill and map the route and everything, but they had drones flying up, and just it was really I thought that was a really cool event. I at another school, they had hurling golf. You know, foot golf now is a big thing. They had hurling golf. Again, they had pitches in the grounds, and they had 9-hole course made out of all the pitches. You know, again, sounds simple, but at the same time, there's a bit of planning involved, and they had scorecards done out and everything. You know,
I think it's important here as well to as a teacher, like, let the ideas bounce around the class or the group in front of you, because you can have an idea, but like, if it's their idea, if they're more bought into it, and the little bits of creativity that shoots off from different ideas, particularly those from a non-GAA background, they can just come up with something you never would have. That could be far more, I suppose, widely interesting to broader school community, as opposed to what you as a teacher will think of times as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I suppose that's something I would always stress as well whenever I go to visit a school to meet teachers or on our training days, would be that exact point there, that it's like, these kids, like, and even on the slide, let's say in the instruction module and the event management module, we have all a big list of the various different events that they can run, but we also have other at the bottom, and the other is really important, because it's exactly that. Because when you are enthusiastic with a group of kids and you're throwing out different ideas, and then they're maybe discussing them and they're bouncing ideas off each other, there's always nuggets, gold, brilliant ideas that come up from the group, like that, as I said, like that hurling golf, like, you know, that's not on any list that we have, but it came from the floor, from a kid. And again, you know, as you said, if it's their idea, and if they're enthusiastic about it, then they're going to be so heavily invested in it that it's going to work. You know what I mean? And they'll all have great crack doing it, you know, and that's the key, like, you know.
I can remember when I was in Ross at the TYs, actually, I think one of them had an older sister in 6th year, and she was saying how, like, they're all just really stressed. So they actually organised a coffee morning for the 6th years at a time when they'd have had class. Like, you know, it was like it was April or May. It was getting near like crunch time, and just TYs, no, let's put something on for the 6th years now, and they had just loads of pots of tea and a couple of healthy treats and a couple of sweet treats as well. And the 6th years just had a chance to sit down, not be rushed during their lunch, and not feel like, oh, we should be studying, we should be working. They just chilled out for an hour. And I remember beforehand I was a bit apprehensive, like, is there really need for this? But just you could actually sense the lightening in the mood around the school for like the day or so afterwards.
That's it, like, and it's so simple, but it's coming from them, and it's, and again, anything that, if they come up with something that can be linked into one of the modules that they're doing, well-being, whatever that might be, or as I said, the Healthy Clubs initiative, brilliant. And as you said, John, the thing is, if it's their idea, they're going to be much more willing to invest their time and energy into it. And I think the key is, though, like I know I'm a whore for it, like, and it's something that I'm very conscious of, is to allow them to make mistakes, allow them to plan, take a step back. Yes, help them, but take a step back. And in your head, you'll be hearing the discussions going on. You think, oh no, don't do it that way. But sometimes you just have to let them do it and let them play it out. And that's why I suppose we do encourage schools to go small before they go big, because all those little things be ironed out in the small one, and then they realize, oh yeah, actually that's what we should do. But if me or you tell them as their teachers, then they'll never have that chance to learn from that mistake that they would have made. And again, and sometimes sometimes some of the best ideas came from mistakes anyway,
And seeing how quickly they can pivot in the moment. To put it onto a teacher's point of view, so I probably should have cleared this up at the start. The teacher delivers the module, they're given a resource pack of materials and they can go. Is it generally timetabled in? Has that kind of, because I know it used to be a little bit different from school to school, is it largely uniform across schools now, or is there still a bit of variability there in terms of how it's delivered?
So I suppose we would definitely encourage schools to timetable it. And most schools have, but not every school, because look, the nature is, like, obviously a school has their timetable and we won't interfere that. We can advise and say, look, the best way to deliver this is if it's timetabled. You have different ways, like you would have, let's say in my school, Gort, we have 120 TYs, there's 6 classes, all 6 classes do the program. We have 2 teachers delivering it. Obviously I'm out on secondment now, but let's say hypothetically if I am there, it's me and one other. I'll have 3 classes, he'll have 3 classes, and then we'll rotate. It's on a rotation basis, 10 weeks. Every 10 weeks the classes move. So I'll cover certain modules we've 1 hour classes, and we'd have them. We're actually, in fairness to the school management, they very much bought into it. We have them, each class is 3 hours of Future Leaders a week. So we've 1 hour classes. So like that's a lot of contact time, which means that it gives us, and funny enough, like, even though we have a lot of contact time with them, we don't actually try to get any extra modules done. We actually use all that contact time to plan and prepare events and to run as many events and to really build up the skills, let's say, in terms of the PR side of things and the social media side of things, or, for the guys and girls who are going out analysing games, we'd be same as Loretto Wexford there, which you mentioned. We'd have analysts, we'd have a performance analysis team with every school team goes out. Like, in fairness, the principal bought software and everything for them to properly use to be recording games and clipping games and all that kind of stuff. And we have a sports journalism team with every team that goes out as well. So I suppose a big learning that we would have taken, and again, it came from a kid. I remember a number of years ago, at the end of the year, I'd always get feedback, give a feedback form out to the students. And I remember they're anonymous, but this one that he had filled out, but he came back to me after filled it out because his name wasn't on it. But in fairness, he said it straight out. He goes, look, sir, I think that the committee is brilliant. He wasn't on the committee now. He goes, the committee is brilliant if you're on it. And he said that they're very busy. And while we're involved in the events, we don't necessarily get to do any of the hands-on organising and, and I said, okay, interesting. So he said, so I was just thinking about it. So we have 120 TYs. We have a committee of 20. They're flat out for the year. And while we would have social media committee with probably another 40 kids on it, and they would be linked with every team, and we'd have performance analysis groups and they would be linked with teams. So they would be busy, but the actual main committee would be absolutely flat to the mat. Okay. And it was a good point. And I was thinking, Jesus, you know what? You're right. So what we do now is we have our main committee, but then for every event that they organise, there's a subcommittee. So if it's a case, so like they organise a primary school blitz, there's a subcommittee, and the chairperson of the subcommittee is on the main committee. There's a social media committee. The PRO is the chairperson of the social media committee. Like fundraising committee. There's and all the so then all of a sudden we moved from having maybe 20 kids that were hands-on on a regular basis to having about 70 of the 120 that were very busy and hands-on. And like, look, not like, there's other kids who are going to be flat out with green schools and with YSI or whatever, and that's brilliant, but at least it's given the opportunity for the kids who do want to be flat out with it to get involved and be heavily invested and heavily involved in it. So yeah, that's how we run it in Gort. Let's say everyone's involved. But there's, let's say, I've seen schools, let's say, who might also have 120 TYs, and they'd have it timetabled on an option line with YSI, Junk Couture, whatever that might be, and they'd have a class of 24 or 30 that would do Future Leaders for the year. You might have it a case that I was only chatting to a school 2 days ago, and they had, the way they were going to do it next year was they were going to have, again, in 10-week blocks, 15-week blocks, what they were going to be doing, but they'd have a group of kids for 15 weeks, and it was opposite something else, and then they'd swap over. So all the students, there was going to be 2 teachers delivering it, all the students would get to do Future Leaders, but in 15-week blocks kind of a thing, which again, that's perfectly fine. You have it a case, let's say, where you might have some, maybe, let's say, for example, you might be timetabled for 1 class a week with your Future Leaders, right? And with the main cohort of them, or 2 classes or 3 classes, whatever your timetable for. But then that certain modules might be given to other subject departments. So you might outsource your nutrition to the home ec teachers. You might outsource the sports journalism to the English department. And again, that can work very well if it's a case that the teacher that you're outsourcing it to wants to be involved in it, and then you would only look after their uploading of tasks and organising of events, and maybe you probably do the introductory and the event management, and the rest of them would be outsourced. I suppose in that instance, and in all the instances, then you probably have your coaching, your games development staff coming in to do your coaching module and your refereeing module. And again, where it works very well, as in with that model, but the teacher has to buy in to want to do it, rather than me saying to you, John, you are delivering this module in your class. That might not work as well. Whereas when the teacher wants to deliver it in their class, well, then they're invested and they understand the reasons why you would want to do it.
The young lad who said the committee is great if you're on it, well, he knows exactly how GAA clubs work. He has that figured out well in advance.
Yeah, that's it.
And a teacher then, so they get a resource pack of like PowerPoints, activities, stuff like that, handouts and all they can use. Great. And have you noticed anything, like really briefly now to wrap these last couple of bits up, any difference in how it's delivered or just how it's even taken on board in terms of like all boys, all girls or mixed schools, or are they largely like quite successful just with the slight tweaks that you would have anyway in the different contexts?
Yeah, it's funny because I suppose one of the new things we brought in 2 years ago was our Future Leaders School Awards, right? Because I was just looking through the entries for the student awards. I was looking at the work from the social media side of things. So I was getting a very, I suppose, clear view and clear indications that there was brilliant things happening around the country. But again, as I said, these things don't happen without the hard work of teachers and students. And so I suppose to recognise that, what we did was we set up the Future Leaders School Awards. So the first version of that was 2 years ago. This year just gone now was a second version of it. Next year's, so for the current TY cohort who are doing Future Leaders right now, on the 17th of September 2025 in Croke Park, there will be the School Awards again. So we have bronze, silver and gold schools.
Similar to Goshka.
Exactly, yeah. Sure, we're linked with Goshka anyway. So, and the idea is, I suppose, to, as I said, just to recognise those schools who've gone above and beyond, really. And if you take the gold schools from last year, we had a massive mix of, we had mixed schools, we had all boys schools, we had all girls schools, we had a Desh school, we had city schools, we had country schools, which I suppose from our point of view we were delighted with, because it meant that it wasn't necessarily a case that it was all, that every school we had up there was all boys schools and that's it. There was a good mix of the schools, and in fairness to them as well, what we did actually last year was, this is the first year doing it, worked really well, and something we will be doing next year. So after the awards ceremony, we actually had a kind of a young scientist style thing where we had a little display village, let's say, where all the goals schools had a display area where they're displaying what it was they did during the year and how they became, what they did to qualify them as a gold school. And we ran a teacher training day in conjunction with the school awards. So our Oide associates were there, and they met with the new schools and the new teachers. There was over 100 of them there, which is brilliant. And they then, at a certain point of the day, came down to the other room where we had our award ceremony, and they got to go around and meet the pupils and the teachers from the gold schools to see what it was that they did and get some ideas. And what was brilliant was that the range of events was huge. You had every kind of event there, which was brilliant. So I suppose the like I said at the very start, one of the key things was for us, and it will always be, to try to stay in touch with teachers and students on the ground, get the feedback from them, see what's working. If tweaks need to be made, brilliant. And I suppose ultimately to try to make as big of an impact as possible in terms of that physical activity, social interaction and well-being piece, where we get as many kids active and engaged as possible, really, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Like it's evolved a good bit the last few years. And just like to wrap up, what are any potential plans for evolution or next steps over the next year or two that maybe you might like to see it go, or directions we might see coming, without giving away potential discussions that are going on at the minute or anything?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, look, there's nothing necessarily top secret anyway, thank God. But I suppose, look, the first protocol would be that, so we have 326 schools doing the program, and what we want to ensure is that we support all those 326 and ensure that the program is running as well as it can in all of those schools, really. And like, we could, if we wanted, like, we could go to 500 schools, 400 schools, no problem. But it's just a matter of ensuring that, right, if you do go that big quickly, well, are they all being supported, and will some fall between the cracks? I suppose long term that would be the aim, to definitely. And I suppose with the advent, I suppose, of the new transition year program statement and the senior cycle redevelopment, where I suppose a huge emphasis is put on developing competencies, building on the skills from junior cycle and developing competencies in our senior cycle pupils, and the competencies like, managing learning and self, communication skills, developing communication, that competency in young people, ability to work with others, ability to participate in society. All of those things are hugely important for our young people, let's say, when they leave school, when they go into third level, like, as you well know, and beyond, that they're able to thrive and survive and thrive, I suppose, in the world that we're living in, I suppose, and to meet the challenges of the 21st century. So with that in mind, I suppose, from our point of view, let's say, any developments we make to the program would be definitely through the lens of, right, three lenses, I suppose. Your GAA values, and making sure that you're true to that, and looking at the GAA manifesto and making sure that it's very much an inclusive program where, no matter where the child is from or their background, that they feel as though they can play an active part in the Future Leaders program. But also very much at the heart of what we will be doing in terms of developments will be looking at the transition year program statement and looking at the student dimensions, let's say, in terms of personal growth, etc., and providing experiences for the students through the Future Leaders program where those student dimensions can be developed, obviously with one eye on the competencies that they need to develop at senior cycle. Because I think by applying what they've learned and putting what they've learned into practice, and by organising events, you're naturally exposing the students to opportunities to develop their communication skills, to develop their ability to work with others, to develop their ability to participate in society, cultivate well-being, problem solve, all of those soft skills that are really, really important. So I suppose that would be a big part now of our design going forward. And obviously then, as I said, in that design phase and in that expansion phase, it would be nice, let's say, to if the program was available in as many schools as possible, going forward, let's say over the next 3, 5, 10 years, yeah, that's a big thing for us, I suppose. While also, in terms of looking at come up with innovative ways, things that enthuse the transition years, I suppose, and keep, if you stay the same, if you don't evolve, it'll get stale. Do you know what I mean? So new initiatives or innovations, for example, the Events Month. So Events Month, 2 years ago was the first Events Month. We had just over 16,000 young people involved. Last year, it went up to over 24,000. Now, having 24,000 young people active and involved in events that are organised by future year students that wouldn't have happened otherwise, that is a powerful impact, and I suppose growing that and continuing to grow it, and maybe, and as time goes on, seeing what else we can add to it to make it, I suppose, as to ensure that the students are as enthusiastic in the future as they are about it now.
And if someone just wants to find out more, see some of the events that are going on, or just follow it on social media, or get in touch about potentially signing up for next year, where can they do any of that?
So I suppose from a website point of view, it's learning.gaa.ie /future leaders. So learning.gaa.ie /future leaders. And from a social media point of view, at GAA Future Leader across all social media channels. So Instagram, I suppose, would be the best one, because that's where the kids themselves in the schools are posting a huge amount too. But X and Facebook it's there as well, and there's registration links to sign up. Or if you want, for example, right now, Charlotte Burns is going to go visit in schools during the Events Month, so that's brilliant. So if schools do want to apply to have Charlotte Burns visit their event, by going to the Future Leaders webpage, they'll see tabs at the bottom of the page where they can click on different things, in terms of the school awards or Charlotte Burns or Events Month, or the individual student awards, as you said there, Leinster Final Day in Croke Park. All that is all referenced on learning.gaa.ie /future leaders.
I'll do my level best to try and remember to include all those in the description or the show notes at the bottom there. Oh, that's been brilliant. Thanks so much for your time and giving all that information there, and hopefully it'll lead to more growth, but also growth that you're able to keep an account of over the next few years as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks a million, John. Great to chat to you.